Hey everyone, welcome to another video review of Alien Earth Season 1. We're going to be covering episodes 3 and 4 in this review. For anyone that doesn't know me, I'm Bryant Dillon. I am the president of Fanbase Press. I'm also co-founder of the company and a co-host of the Fanbase Weekly podcast. For this video, I'm going to be reviewing, as I said, Episode 3, Metamorphosis, and Episode 4, which is Observation from Alien Earth Season 1. Quick spoiler warning because we will be diving into analysis and plot points from these episodes. So if you're worried about being unspoiled for these episodes, if you haven't seen them yet, come back later after you've had a chance to do so. Well, I will not bury the lead. I am still on the fence with this series. Big time Alien fan, as I explained in my last video review, but there are things that are really working for me with Alien Earth, and there are things that just really aren't. So I'm going to be patient, as I said in my last review. I'm going to give it time for the entire season to roll out. Let's just go through what happened in episode 3 and 4 briefly. So episode 3, Metamorphosis. This is sort of a wrap up of the first 3 episodes. We have the continued fallout of the crash of the Maginot, and we have Kid Cavalier, who is a leader of the Prodigy Corporation, demanding that the alien specimens be brought back to his lab. Wendy ends up killing the Xenomorph that is wreaking havoc throughout the city or building structure that the spaceship has crashed into. And that threat is eliminated. But we also have Morrow, the cyborg character, encountering a couple of the other Lost Boy android hybrids. He interacts with Smee and Slightly and ends up actually planning a device on Slightly, and that becomes this plot point where he's able to talk to Slightly and sort of establish this relationship with him. The episode ends with Kirsch, Timothy Oliphant, dissecting a facehugger and then planting an embryoic or fetal xenomorph into a lung that had been removed from Wendy's brother. So that lung has been taken out of him, put in stasis. He's been given a new lung, and now they're using this old lung to gestate a new xenomorph. With episode 4, Observation, obviously the story continues. And we had this thing at the end of the previous episode that plays into this episode where Wendy starts to have some sort of connection to the xenomorphs. She's able to feel the pain of the facehuggers or the chest bursters. And then in this episode, Kid Cavalier and others, her other handlers, begin to realize that Wendy has the ability to speak to the xenomorphs on a auditory level, something that humans can hear. Other big parts of this episode are pretty much the testing of the T Ocellus. This is the octopus-like eyeball creature on a sheep, where we see this creature essentially attack the sheep, rip its eye out, and then from its eye socket sort of take control of the animal. And then we also have the continued story of Morrow, the cyborg, where he continues to manipulate Slightly, form a relationship, and then use his leverage over Slightly to force him to at first attempt to steal an alien egg and then come up with a plan to infect someone, a human, with one of the facehuggers. The episode ends with Wendy finding the xenomorph, the chest burster that's gestating in her brother's lung, and essentially talking to it. I mean, it hatches, she's petting it and sort of speaking to it, one assumes. So we have a xenomorph whisperer in this episode. So things that I liked and things that I didn't or did not work for me. Let's go to that next. the positives. Let's start off with what everyone's talking about, the T-Oculus. This creature has been super bizarre, intriguing, and frightening since the beginning of the series. And, I am still not convinced that it was a wise decision to attempt to make creatures that can live up to what Giger created with the Xenomorph. But boy, this was worth it. I am not a gore hound, and that is not what makes the Alien franchise exciting for me. But I thought there was something truly terrifying about the feeling of intelligence that this creature has and the way that it unapologetically, unsympathetically just went after this sheep and ripped its eye out and took it over. And you can imagine it doing that to any other creature, especially since we saw it first infected in the eye of the cat. Just terrifying stuff, terrifying on the chestburster level, visceral body horror level that one expects. And what I really find fascinating is that the ripping of the eye was terrifying and gruesome and difficult to watch. But I think that the most chilling and creepiest moment of the episode was when it was almost like once the T Oculus had possessed the sheep, it didn't understand or didn't care how a sheep functions. And so it stands up on its hind legs like a human and kind of looks at Kirsch and the other people that are looking at it. And I don't know, that was just incredibly effective and creepy. And you begin to ask all these questions. How intelligent is this creature? What is it thinking? How does it operate? Where did it come from? I also saw a really interesting theory about where this creature is going to end up. A couple of theories, actually. There's one fan suggestion that I saw that made a lot of sense that Kid Cavalier is so focused on it and treats it with such frivolousness that it would only be ironically appropriate for the Teoculus to inhabit Kid Cavalier at some point. And then you also get into the terrifying thought of like, well, how intelligent is this creature? Could it control a human? Would it start to speak to us then? And what does it do if it controls a human who has a fair amount of power within this universe? The other idea that I thought was really interesting is those who are still suggesting that maybe these creatures came from the same place, that they inhabit a world along with the xenomorph. And the prominent eye sockets that we know from Giger's design within the xenomorph, that there's this human skull underneath the dome of the alien head. Could we see a xenomorph with a T-Oculus controlling it? I mean, what would that be like? How terrifying is that? And I mean, I guess to some degree, we're still asking the question of like, how do these creatures measure up? How do they function with the xenomorph? How do they compare to the xenomorph? And ultimately, one has to ask the question also, what is their worth? Why are they valuable to Weyland-Yutani? Why are they equally desirable by Kid Cavalier, especially when we see individuals within his circle saying, this might not be what to focus on right now. The other thing that I will give a shout out to that I think the series is doing really well is continuing to honor the unforgiving depiction of corporate dystopia that is present, I think, at least in the first three films, if not throughout the entire franchise. These films have a lot of commentary on capitalism. They have a lot of commentary on consumerism and corporatism, and I think it's important that that doesn't get lost, especially in a world where we are dealing with the increasing power and wealth being filtered to less and less individuals, and the very prescient idea of mega corporations beyond our wildest dreams. The mergers that we're seeing, the acquirement that we're seeing, the way things are being assembled under one umbrella or one individual or one form of leadership that all speaks to the future of Alien. Even the most recent Alien Romulus was showing us many examples of how oppressed the working class is in this universe, how stacked the deck is against them. And this series continues to not only do that, but also add commentary, I think, that comes directly from what we're living through today. Characters like Kid Cavalier, I think, really speak to the ideas that surround the tech industry and the wealth that is around that industry and the idea, especially in corporate America, and it might go beyond our own nation, but this idea that if you are in a position of power, if you have wealth, then you must have done something to get there, something legit, that you must be more intelligent or more skilled than the other people around you. And I think what has become very apparent in the past few decades is that that's not true at all. Many people do not have the skills. Many people are undeserving of their positions of power. And many people are just frankly fortunate or lucky that they end up where they are. And that's really a frightening thing to think about. What I think is really interesting about the Alien franchise when we think about that is for so long, I, as a young fan, growing up with the first three films, thought of the goal of acquiring the Xenomorph within the company as this overarching, dark, secret goal, this conspiracy that they were, plotting at every end to get to. And now with my own life experience and looking at what we're seeing depicted in these other stories, these newer stories, I start to re-examine things. I mean, even Aliens, you look at it and you go, wow, there's a reason that Burke doesn't have the entire company's muscle behind him. And it's debatable if that's simply because he wants to have it all for himself, or if because this is just one of many things that Wayland Yutani has got its fingers in. This is someone's pet project that they thought would get them rich, and it just never paid off. So here's someone 57 years later, picking it up and taking it forward. It's interesting to see, and it makes you, especially while we look at the power and influence and control that these individuals have in these corporations, as we start to see how petty, how human, how flawed they can be. I think that's very revealing about what the public discussion or the public sentiment is when it comes to those who have a lot of money, those who have a lot of corporate power in today's world. All right, so things that didn't work for me. I'm gonna again try to be pretty patient with the series. Things that might hit me weird. We'll see where it goes. But the one thing that feels pretty solid that I'm not loving right now, and I'm interested to see how this will eventually fall out, how it'll end up connecting, or where this series will leave, its conclusion. But the way that this series so far has defanged the Xenomorph, I feel like it's unavoidable that it eats away at the foundation of the original three Alien films. It makes the Xenomorph less dangerous than we are supposed to believe it is. It makes Ripley's sacrifice less meaningful and less necessary. I mean, even though Alien Resurrection is sort of a film that I guess the film that the fandom could, leave or take. There's an idea that they had to go back to DNA records to get this creature. And there's also this idea that if this creature ever gets to Earth, it's going to be the end of Earth. So yeah, I'm interested to see where we go, but the things that really struck me as unfortunate is that I don't know that we needed the Xenomorph at the beginning of this series to run rampant throughout the first three episodes, and the fact that it ends up getting dispatched so easily, killed pretty quickly by a synthetic or a hybrid, either way, really puts a big hole in the idea of this creature's so dangerous it'll kill everything if it gets to Earth. I mean, Ripley, again, she's not the voice of truth. She's speaking her own emotional truth. But in Aliens, she's literally saying, if one of these things gets down here, that's it. That will be it. And then with Alien 3, whether we're discussing things like the egg showing up, randomly at the beginning of the film, based on earlier script drafts of things like the idea that spores or DNA is left by the alien queen that can grow into these things, grow into these egg pods, or the idea that Ripley sacrifices her entire life, or her she has the opportunity to have the creature removed. She rallies these prisoners to sacrifice themselves for this larger goal. This seems to go against that. This seems to say, you know what? If the xenomorph did get to Earth, one xenomorph, two xenomorphs, it's not a big deal. We could contain it. And we even have these eggs here, which seems like that should be the end of Earth. From everything that we've heard about the xenomorph, the presence of alien eggs on Earth should mean it's inevitable that these things are going to get out. They're going to massively infect the population, and that's the end. Obviously, I don't think that's actually going to happen, and so that makes this something that sort of cuts off the franchise at its knees in a certain way. And I'm not sure if it's the fact that the showrunner and the creators of the show are not worried about that, don't are not, I don't want to say don't care, but are not focused on that, believe that what the story they're telling is more important than that flaw, or if it's that they don't understand that that's happening. They don't understand that, oh, if we do this, if we write it this way, it negatively reflects on what has come before. Um, to some degree, you could say that this is also something that, gets messy with the idea of where's Weyland Yutani in regards to what are they planning? If they already had the alien before the Nostromo and then they had the alien after the Nostromo because of Romulus, why do they want the Nostromo? Why go through these ridiculous lengths? Especially because in Ridley and Cameron's universe, there seemed to be, even though it was vague, it seemed to be some sort of government establishment. There was the idea that you could get in trouble with quarantines, customs. There were gatekeepers that could get in your way. From what we've seen in Alien Earth, that's not the case. The corporations now run everything. This is a corporate run planet. There really isn't, as far as we know, anyone to get in trouble with. Um, but maybe that's yet to be explained. Lots of questions. We'll see where we end up at the end of the series, because I think that's really what matters is there a way that they're going to attempt to subvert this defanging of the xenomorph, or is this just a casualty of the story that they want to tell? Okay, so I guess that kind of rolls me into the one thing I wanted to discuss with sort of the odds and ends section of this review. And that's really, we're 4 episodes in, and I've got to ask the question, why is this alien Earth? And I don't mean why does it take place on Earth, but I more mean like why is that the title of this series? Why is that the marketing campaign of this series? And I mean, I guess there has to be a little bit of history with this because Alien 3, the studio was so hungry for Alien 3 and so hungry for more of Cameron's Aliens that if you're an Alien fan, you might be aware that they released a trailer for Alien 3 that had nothing to do with the film.
In 1979, we discovered in space, no one can hear you scream. In 1992, we will discover on Earth, everyone can hear you scream.
And that was how they got people juiced for Alien 3. And then obviously the story they came up with for Alien 3 didn't have anything to do with that. You know, there was a threat of an alien going to Earth, but that was not what the film was about. And I feel like they've repeated that mistake with this series. There's nothing so far about this series that makes it need to be on Earth or satisfying any kind of itch that fans have for xenomorphs taking over Earth or being introduced to Earth. And I guess that just makes me ask why, you know. I guess from a marketing standpoint, you can understand why they would do this. It's a captivating image of these aliens biting Earth or you know, taking over Earth, face hugging Earth, all these things. I honestly, I'll be honest, it seems a little silly. It's a little B movie level marketing. I don't think it has the artistry of some of the like film posters or imagery from the first three films or even from things like Prometheus or Covenant. But I was going to be forgiving of that if it had a connection. And I'm at the point in episode 4 where I'm like, I don't think this has anything to do with Earth beyond taking place on Earth. It's not about life on Earth, really. I mean, it's casually comments on that, but it's not exploring necessarily life on Earth. It's exploring a very specific person's life in a very specific part of Earth, with a very specific plot going on. It's not dealing with aliens taking over Earth. It can't really because as a prequel, that's just not a possibility. Um, so yeah, there's part of me that goes, one would think you'd still want to do this at some point in the Alien franchise. You'd want to introduce an alien to Earth and have Earth be threatened to be infected. They've done it in the comics. It's happened in other stories. Um, but it doesn't seem like they're leaving room for that. I'm sure they can find it if they really want to do it, but it just, I don't know. There's an inherent sloppiness with that makes me go, it's not a big deal. But if you're building out a franchise and you're telling multiple stories, I feel like there would be a better, more descriptive title for this series that doesn't sacrifice the idea of Alien Earth, while also being more focused on what is this series about? This series is about immortality. What is it to be human? What is it to be alien? Transhuman evolution, you know, that seems to be the heart of this series. So it feels like the title and the marketing should reflect that a little bit. All right, let's go on to recommendations. And these recommendations come out of a few things. So the first recommendation comes out of the idea of I saw some people being like, wow, we're really getting to see alien creatures studied and tested in this series that like we saw something like that with Alien Resurrection, but it didn't really dive into that deeply. You know, the story went elsewhere. It wasn't so much about testing and experimenting on the aliens in captivity. And this was like a huge topic when the Dark Horse comics. Like it was like I remember people writing into the letter columns at one point and being like, "Hey, is it possible to have an alien comic where there's not some weird mad scientist studying aliens at the corner of the galaxy? Because it was so prominent. There was always little variations on it, but it was a very, very common idea. I'm going to pitch you one of these comics. If you really like this aspect of Alien Earth, this comic has my highest recommendation. It might be the best alien comic ever made. This is Aliens Labyrinth. It is a four-issue limited comic book series. It was published by Dark Horse Comics in 1993. It's written by Jim Woodring, illustrated by Killian Plunkett, colored by Matt Hollingsworth, lettered by Ellie DeVille, edited by Ryder Windham, and it has cover art by Plunkett as well. I will just gush over this for a little bit. First off, Woodring's script is amazing. If you are into learning about why aliens do the things they do, what their behavior is, what choices they'll make when put in certain life or death situations, or choice A, choice B type choices. That all happens in this comic, and they go into great detail. But this is also a murder mystery story. This is something where this Dr. Paul Church had an interaction and survived an alien hive early on in his life. Years later, he is leading the space station, running the space station where they test the xenomorphs and are trying to learn ways that they can use use that knowledge to help humans. But there are people that are dying at this space station. And so we follow a character who's sent there to investigate some of these deaths and starts to uncover that the alien experimentation might be a front for something even more dark and disturbing. Again, cannot recommend this highly enough. I also will give a shout out for Killian Plunkett. This is a artist who potentially, aside from Tristan Jones, is the best alien comic book artist ever. That is highly agreed upon in the fandom. I think when you look at his artwork, not only does he nail the original Giger design, but he also gets the movement, uh, the body movement, the positioning that is key to the xenomorph, and every page, he just nails it. So check out Aliens Labyrinth. Also, because we love this comic book so much, we do have a fan base feature where we talk about it for 2 hours. So check that out as well. You can find that on our Apple Podcasts feed for the Fanbase Weekly podcast. So in this episode, we also have Wendy beginning to be able to interact with the xenomorphs. She almost becomes a xenomorph whisperer, if you will. I want to wait and see where this goes. I don't love the depiction of it. Some of it seems a little goofy, and I don't understand why Wendy is the one that's connected to them. But again, let's give the series time. Let's see where that goes. And the one thing I will say is the concept is not outlandish. The concept is something that's been explored many times. We have a similar idea with Ripley 8 in Alien Resurrection. I don't feel like they ever took that because there was no films that followed. They never really got to take that to the place that it could have gone, the way that we could have seen Ripley interacting or communicating with the alien. I mean, there's also these questions of, what is Alien Earth's belief about the xenomorph versus what do others believe? Alien Earth seems very, very clearly to think, and maybe Noah Hawley thinks this, that the xenomorphs are just animals. And I know that there's a division in the fan community where some people really like the Lovecraftian feel that Ridley Scott brings to these creatures and that Giger brings to these creatures. Others really end up focusing on what Cameron and Galen Hurd brought to the creature, where It's more akin to an insect, but still has some of these I don't know if supernaturals really, but abilities beyond our own understanding. The big one being that there's always been this idea that there's some sort of psychic communication with the aliens. I was just talking about Aliens Labyrinth, and that in that series they suggest that the aliens see psychically, and that while they can see the human or they can see the minds of humans, they can't understand them. They don't know what we're thinking about in the way that they can communicate with one another or understand each other. Long way of getting to a point of saying there's some odd choices being made, or there's some vagueness, I think, with what how Wendy's connecting with the Xenomorphs, how the Xenomorphs communicate. But let's see what the series has to say. And if you're looking for a comic book recommendation, of course I have one for you. A story that is really close to what they're doing right now, at least conceptually, is Aliens Purge. This was a one-shot comic book that was published by Dark Horse Comics. It was published in 1997. It's written by Ian Eddington. It's penciled by Phil Hester, inked by Andy Parks, colored by Chris Challenor, lettered by Gary Fields, and edited by Philip Amara and David Land. And it's got cover art by Den Beauvais, who is a big name in the early 90s, late 80s comic book, alien comic book scene. Um, this series is so close to some of the things they're doing in Alien Earth. This is basically a one shot where there is a planet where I can't remember if it's Weyland-Yutani or somewhere else, but a company or the company has has contracted this scientist to experiment with xenomorphs in some sort of remote planet or moon. And the thing that they've discovered that is kind of amazing is that when people suffering from leprosy are infected with a chest burster, the leprosy actually slows down the growth of the chest burster. And it almost becomes like a frozen stasis. So it doesn't ever come out of the person who has leprosy. That person still has the benefit that the xenomorphs will essentially leave them alone. That because they sense they have a infant xenomorph inside them, they will not kill them. And so these lepers work within the alien hive without any danger. And they have a friend who is a woman named Eloise. When we first see her, she is naked and sleeping with the xenomorphs. So we clearly get the idea that they're not posing a threat to her. And what becomes clear over the course of the story is that um, she is it's almost like an organic android. She's been grown from the xenomorph's DNA. So she is supposed to be like a superpowered alternative to synthetics, but she also has a deep connection to the xenomorphs. And so when some corporate overlords roll in looking to essentially pillage this planet and take what they want, um, Eloise Eloise doesn't like that, and her and her xenomorphs get a little more than upset about the lepers being under attack, and we see what happens when you create an android with a connection to xenomorphs, and then threaten those people, threaten that android, threaten those xenomorphs. So I guess I have to say, I think this is a really interesting one shot. The character does reappear in another one shot where they're at that point being hunted by predators. So it's a character that's introduced into the Dark Horse mythos, doesn't go too far, but does have multiple appearances. And honestly, it's just a cool one shot to check out if you're hankering for a little bit more of that alien synthetic team up. All right, everyone, I will leave it there. If you have any questions or comments, leave them on this video. I will try to address them in a review coming up. We've got more Alien Earth coming, so I'll be back with more reviews very soon. Once again, this has been Bryant Dillon for Fanbase Press, where we celebrate fandoms and create new ones. Until next time.